Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Today's mission is organic wine, conventional wine, contaminated wine. Just picked up an article from EcoWatch. EcoWatch, March 27th, 2016. Monsanto's glyphosate found in California wines, even wines made with organic grapes. Shortly after the release of a report showing 14 beers testing positive for glyphosate in Germany, a concerned supporter of Moms Across America approached me, being the author of this article, at a convention with disturbing news. With disturbing news, he said he had tested results from Microbe Inotech Lab of St. Louis showing 10 different wines from large and small vineyards contained the chemical glyphosate, the active ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup weed killer, including wine made from organic grapes. Now, this is extremely disturbing, especially for me. I love wine. We sell wine at the restaurant. We sell organic wine. We sell conventional wine. We sell wine from all across the world. And, you know, the thing is, people don't understand that what you spray on the land, and even I see so many people walking into the stores buying Roundup every year, just spraying it on their yards, and it's just like, oh, just spray weed killer, spray Roundup on that, just spray away. And people don't understand all of your actions, everything you're doing, especially when you're spraying chemicals like that, end up somewhere. They end up in our food supply. They end up in our water supply. They end up. I haven't used Monsanto Roundup in actually I don't know how long. And believe me, the only thing I would ever even consider using it for is poison ivy, because I can't stand poison ivy. My son breaks out terribly from just even looking at poison ivy. But you know, it's just like you have to get out there and pick weeds. You have to do some kind of integrative management of weeds. Jamie, remember that really famous vineyard in California?
Yes. That
I got and I was I got in a conversation with the winemaker.
Yes.
And they sell their bottles for $1,000 a bottle. This was their second label. It was still wholesale, 50, 60, 70 bucks a bottle, which means it's going to be retail $100 a bottle in the store. And we got into a sustainability conversation because he was bragging he was sustainable. And he goes, no, the vineyard's sustainable and this and that. And I said, oh, talk to me about what you're doing, this and that. And come to find out, he's spraying Roundup on his on his weeds. And I said, well, what do you mean you're spraying Roundup? That's not sustainable. He goes, well, that's very sustainable because I don't have to pay people to pick weeds. I don't have to pay laborers to do that. It's a much more sustainable approach for business, for managing my finances. So it's shocking how
everybody's thought is completely different in what sustainable is.
Exactly. Everybody has a different definition of what's sustainable. His definition of sustainability was making his bank account balance and turning a profit, not by doing the right thing on the land. But it's just so ridiculous how stupid people would be like this, right? Here's a person who's making a highly rated wine, touting the sustainable notion, and they're just spraying their land with crap. Now, Jamie, we just took a tour of Italy. We were there for 11 days. It was our third tour of Italy, our second tour in depth with wineries. And I got to tell you, people on these small properties, people that own the vineyards, live in the vineyards, aren't stupid, especially in Europe. They're not stupid to spray the land. I'm not saying that European wines are cleaner, because I'm sure there's these big agri-industries that are just spraying the hell out of everything. But these people that live on their land, that live on the wineries, that live there, aren't stupid. They have to drink the water, the same water that they're watering their grapes with. So, the contamination of conventional wine has 28 times higher than organic wine, with levels ranging from 0.6 part per billion to 18 parts per billion in conventional wine. So it's a drastic difference from organic to conventional wine. Major difference. So the point here is that everything's getting contaminated. Our whole food supply, our whole drinking supply, everything is getting contaminated beyond belief, because we just think that all this stuff we're doing just has no effect on us personally. Oh, we can spray our yard and walk away from it. I was talking to one of the local landscapers here, one of the better known landscapers here. And he was telling me that Roundup is totally safe. And I said, whatever gave you the notion that Roundup's totally safe? He goes, well, it's just 2 enzymes or 2 amino acids and the opposite of the other ones, and that's what kills the weeds. But I just like, where in the world did you get that information? You can go on the internet and you can Google and you can find out that there's some serious consequences. And now glyphosate is listed as a possible carcinogen. The wines tested came from Napa, Sonoma, and Mendocino counties in California. The brand names of the wines were not revealed, but frankly, the brand is not the issue. The real issue is the widespread contamination of glyphosate-based herbicides in consumer products. Now, California is our leading producer of produce, so I would assume that California has more glyphosates than any other. But when you think about the whole Midwest and the plains and everything, I mean, they're just growing massive amounts of soybeans, and genetically modified wheat's not available in the U.S., even though it's been contaminated in parts of the country. But soybeans and corn, I would assume that the glyphosates throughout the Midwest are just rampant throughout the plains, because that's how they control, and they do those massive corn and soybean farms, all the way from, North Dakota all the way on down. Of course, now what happens with all that runoff? It goes into the Mississippi. It goes down into the Gulf of Mexico. It contributes to the dead zone. It's just a disaster. So, here are my five reasons why Roundup glyphosate should never be sprayed on any crops, including vineyards. According to farmers like John Kemp of advancingecoag.com, glyphosate-based herbicides are showing up in irrigation water and likely present in manure, fertilizers, and animals fed genetically modified grains and drift from spraying. Glyphosate residues have been detected in many foods, cotton products, breast milk, beers, and wine. So, you can grow soybeans in one state that are sprayed with glyphosate with all this crap Roundup and genetically modified, and then shipped to California or shipped to Iowa or wherever, and then all of a sudden the animals are eating this highly contaminated glyphosate food, and of course it's going to stay in their system, and then of course you eat this pig, this pork, this chicken, whatever it is, that may be free range, it may be from a small family farm, but of course, where's the food coming from? So even when you buy on a small local level, the possibility, even though the farmer didn't do anything to their land, the possibility is disturbing of where this can actually enter into the food supply. Number 2, wine growers of conventional farms report that their family businesses used to be able to harvest from their vines for 100 years. Today, with chemical farming, vines are lasting 10 to 12 years. Glyphosate is a chelator, which makes the vital nutrients and minerals of any living thing it touches unavailable. By taking the risk of depleting the vitality of important crops is not good long-term decision for farmers of any kind. So this is a great point. We buy a lot of wines that have old vines. They tout 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old vines, 100-year-old vines, and this totally makes sense. You're spraying glyphosates, you're spraying things that are robbing the soil, and your vines aren't going to grow as long. It's not going to happen. And I know several vineyards, lots of vineyards, that they have to replace their vines after 15, after 20 years, after 25 years. It's like, oh, the vines are the wine, the grape quality is no longer good. We need to replace and replant. So this totally makes sense. Glyphosate, number 3, glyphosate has been deemed a probable carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Even a small amount, 1 part per trillion, 0.1 part per trillion of glyphosate has been shown to stimulate the growth of breast cancer cells. According to the California Department of Health, breast cancer rates in Sonoma, Napa, and Mendocino counties are 10 to 20% higher than the national average. There are many pending lawsuits against Monsanto for the connection between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Roundup. Interesting. Number 4, the pig study by Peterson and Kruger showed a repeated 30% increase of birth defects and stillborn with the introduction of glyphosate sprayed grains. The infertility and sterility in America is exactly correlated to the pig study results at 30%, the highest in recorded U.S. history. Again, here it's what the animal is eating. And of course, if you're eating this and drinking this, what can only be happening to us? So now, of course, now pigs, they regenerate so much quicker. They go through generations much, much quicker than humans do. So all this stuff about GMOs being safe and glyphosates being safe and this and that from the corporate sponsored science, there's no long-term studies. There's no long-term human studies that are done on this that can say this is 100% safe or even 50% safe or any percent safe, because those studies just don't exist. This takes these are long-term human studies that are long-term human experiments that need to happen. But in pigs and rats, they reproduce so quick, you can see generations, several generations in a year, so you can actually see the effects right away. So you'd have to be stupid to think, well, gee, a lab rat is totally different than a human and they process things differently. You'd have to be totally stupid to think that it only affects certain living things, certain living beings, and not other living beings. People, wake up. It is affecting you. It is totally affecting you. You're just not waking up with 6 rows of teeth tomorrow morning. So for you, it's not an immediate effect. So you're going to keep doing what you're doing because you think, well, this doesn't really matter and it's not really affecting me. I'm still in good shape. My blood work is still fine. My doctor says I'm fine. I'm on 1 or 2 medications, but everything's under control. But I'm just fine. And people just don't get it. There's a direct correlation with what you're putting in your body, what you put in the land, with your direct health and your kids' healths and generations to come. Number 5, French scientist Gilles Eric Seralini and his team have discovered that the co-formulates of Roundup are 1,000 times more toxic than glyphosate and are hormone disruptors, which can lead to breast cancer, miscarriages, birth defects, and many other health issues. Now, you're going to be confused, a lot of people, because they're going to go to Monsanto's website or they're going to hear an ad on Pandora or something how GMOs are leading the future and this and that, and how this is going to feed the world and how it's safe science and yada, yada, yada. That is all industry published science. You can hear some people say, well, so-and-so this scientist has done work for this cause, and he doesn't take much money from Monsanto. He doesn't take much money from the industry. A lot of this, he only gets paid, he only got paid $10,000 annually, or he got paid $1,000 for this. The bottom line is, these people will take money to prove anything. If they're taking money from these companies, they're on an agenda. When Monsanto or any company does a study, they basically put it out there and say, we need a study done to prove this, this, and this. Not prove that it causes birth defects, not prove that there's side effects, not prove that this, this, and this. In fact, in vaccines, people who have adverse effects are removed from the study because they're not there to prove that there's adverse effects on a vaccine. They're there to prove that there's an antibody count. So then they can say, oh, this provides antibodies, and antibodies equal protection and immunity. So you have to understand that this whole system of big business is set up to manipulate us and to create corporate profits. So don't let anybody tell you that there's no correlation between putting something bad on the soil, bad in whatever, and nothing's going to happen to you. Nothing may happen to you today, but of course, again, you don't know the long-term effects. So, of course, wine drinkers, what in the world do you do? Are there countries that have banned glyphosates, Roundup? I don't really know of any that have had long-term policies against glyphosates. I mean, you can go online and look. I mean, here's 10 countries that are acting against glyphosates. Some of them have done something already or have plans to do. Sri Lanka, El Salvador, the Netherlands, Brazil, Argentina, which does make wine. More than 30,000 doctors are requesting a ban on glyphosate. So there's still glyphosates in Argentina. They're just requesting a ban. And of course, who knows how long this takes to leave the soil and leave your drinking water and just leave the environment in general. How long does it take to biodegrade? France, in 2014, France adopted a decree halting the sowing of Monsanto's insected MON 810 corn, and the sole corn crop allowed for cultivation in the European Union. I don't know if there's soybeans or any other crops that are being grown in France. Germany, Colombia, Peru, In 2011, Peru declared a 10-year ban on all GMOs, preventing the import of genetically modified organisms on national territory for cultivation, breeding, and for any transgenic production. Now that's 2011. Of course, there could be things prior to that. I don't know if they sell Roundup there in general, but they do have a GMO ban. And Mexico, in 2014, the Mexican chapter of the Permanent People's Tribunal called on the Mexican government to adopt all necessary measures to ensure the conservation of peasant corn and the main food source, as the main food source of the vital element of the social structure and cohesion. Other notable actions: Switzerland, the government didn't say anything, but they had advocacy groups that actually 2 grocery stores have removed all glyphosate products, which is really, really cool. So 2 grocery store chains have gotten involved there. So, you know, if can you possibly say that you can go buy safe wine out there in any part of the world? I don't think that's really possible. I'm sure some areas are much, much more pristine, whether it's glyphosate something, whether they're adding sulfites, you know, I'm sure there's a handful of really awesome wineries that are super clean, the soil's fantastic, this and that. But just because something says organic doesn't mean you can trust it. But just because it says organic and you can't trust it, don't think to stop supporting. Supporting organic is the direction. So if everybody kept supporting organic, we would have less glyphosate, we'd have less GMOs, we'd have less other harmful chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers, we'd have less of everything. So the more you support organic, the more you're creating a viable future, which is super, super important. It may not seem that way right here and right now when you look at all these reports, but for the future, that's the way to go. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe to my channel.